ministers will be able to give me reassurance on that point.
My Lords, I rise to offer Green support for all of these amendments. Just to briefly comment on the amendments in the name of the noble Lord, Lord Holmes, it really is worth reflecting on the fact that if you design a space, a community, a building that's accessible and welcoming to everybody, then that is something that will be a really good building for any person to enjoy. This is the same principle that applies to accessible public transport, that applies to many other areas. But what I mostly wanted to speak to was Amendment 222 in the name of the noble Lord, Lord Lansley, and to begin by entirely commending him both for tabling this amendment and for the noble Lord's excellent introduction to this. I think he was perhaps reading the mind of the Committee on Climate Change, because I think he must have tabled this amendment before its report about 3 weeks ago, which really stressed the nation's utter failure to prepare for the climate reality that is now already locked in, what's known for shorthand as adaptation. And indeed, to quote another member of your Lordship's House, Baroness Brown, and the noble lady said, "This has been a lost decade in preparing for and adapting to the known risks we face from climate change." So it's very clear that what we should be doing now is making sure that we design and build and deliver buildings, infrastructure, communities that are actually fit for, as the noble Lord said, the next century. And I think, to just take a practical example of this, the APPG on wetlands has done a great deal of work and spread the word a great deal about how crucial wetlands are, and we think about all the issues the government keeps facing all of the time on the issue of sewage and what's spilling into our rivers and our oceans, sustainable urban drainage systems, and indeed just the smallest scale of wetlands, something that I've seen NGOs presenting with that. Very small scale wetlands can be a way of really enriching the biodiversity, the kind of issues that this amendment addresses, but also creating a much more pleasant environment for people and doing something to tackle all of those issues that we have with water distribution in our country. And I think also it's not just the Committee on Climate Change. Your Lordship's House yesterday, in its strong support for the amendment to the Energy Bill, saying that we absolutely have to deal with retrofitting to deal with the adaptation that's necessary to existing homes, I think very much addresses this amendment as well. I would just offer one constructive suggestion to the noble Lord Lansley, and something to think about. I think we have got to the stage now where pretty well everyone, including the government, is talking about the climate emergency, talking about biodiversity and nature. These are just two of the very big issues we're facing in terms of the planetary boundaries. And the Stockholm Institute, a year or so back, concluded that we have exceeded the planetary boundary for novel entities, for shorthands, pesticides, plastics and pharmaceuticals. And if we're going to think about design codes, I would suggest that the next step, the step that everyone will be talking about in a few years' time, but we could get ahead of the curve now, is by saying that actually what we need are design codes that ensure that we are living within all of the planetary boundaries. That includes things like geochemical flows, it includes things like protecting fresh water, a whole range of issues that come under the planetary boundaries model. And if we are indeed going to be able to survive and thrive on this poor, battered planet, those planetary boundaries is really what we have to be designing to live within.